insurmountable. Even after 51 years, when we see the images of the genocide, of the horrific genocide, we are mute, we are horrified and shattered, and we become speechless. We could not even show the real images in today's event, as it is unbearable and too cruel. Let me present before you the special audiovisual publication by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Dhaka, titled Recognizing the 1971 Bangladesh Genocide, an appeal for rendering justice. Although it had been edited and modified for public view, still it may contain images that will be disturbing for many. Let's watch the documentary.
1971, one of the deadliest genocides in human history took place. Genocide includes acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial or religious group. The West Pakistani ruling political and military elites perceived Bengalis racially and ethnically inferior, lesser Muslims, a population infected with Hindu culture. An estimated 3 million Bengalis were killed and 200,000 to 400,000 Bengali women were raped by the Pakistani military and its collaborators. The genocide took place in many phases, in different ways and in various locations. On the 25th of March 1971, Pakistan's military commenced Operation Searchlight. Death squads rampaged through the streets of Dhaka, murdering at least 7,000 people in a single night. The Pakistani military and its collaborators carried out a mass rape campaign against Bengali women, dehumanizing Bengali womanhood. The displacement of an entire demographic of Bengalis testifies to genocide very clearly. One of the most critical pieces of evidence about the 1971 Bangladesh genocide comes from Pakistan in the form of the report of the Hamudur Rahman Commission's inquiry into the 1971 war. The report indicated that mass killings of civilians had indeed occurred. It also recounts army officials' testimony about plotting to arrest and interrogate Bangladeshi intellectuals in December 1971. Many intellectuals were kidnapped and brutally murdered. Their families are witnesses to that tragedy. These heinous crimes are yet to be universally recognized as genocide globally, particularly by the United Nations and other international bodies. Not recognizing the events of 1971 as genocide will not just be a severe injustice done to the memories of the victims of genocide, it will be an injustice done to history itself.
Such a strong message. I mean, when we see that, we become speechless. And anyway, I think we believe that today we will hear from our eminent speakers and we will know more. And this strong message actually, although it happened 51 years ago and the world did not recognize it, Bangladesh is proud to speak up. Bangladesh is proud not to hide the true history. This documentary was actually, we, the embassy, made a subtitle in Portuguese so our friends from Brazil can understand it. Today, we thought to title our webinar as Rising from the Devastation of 1971 Genocide to a Development Miracle. It's a matter of great disgrace, as I was saying, that the international community is yet to accept or even acknowledge that the West Pakistanis had indeed initiated the cold-blooded, systematic attack on the unarmed, defenseless civilian Bengalis at the dead of night of 25th March 1971. The planned attack was named Operation Searchlight, which was the brutal tool to wipe out a full race called the Bengalis. Over the last few years, researchers from various countries have come ahead and gathered evidence suggesting the authenticity of the genocide that took place in Bangladesh in 1971. The Lemkin Institute of USA has recently recognized the Bangladesh genocide. In addition to the unarmed civilians, the Pakistan Army targeted an entire religion to erase it as well. The Hindi community in the then East Pakistan was selectively targeted, just like it happened with the Jews during Second World War. If we look at history, genocides have been the same systematic annihilation of races like the Tutsis in Rwanda. I'm certain that our speakers today will touch upon the significance of this day. Following the 7th March iconic call for emancipation by our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and his subsequent arrest on the late night of 25th March, an immediate initiation of Operation Searchlight denotes the fact that it was entirely orchestrated by the West Pakistanis with the ulterior motive to stop the Bengali resistance. The crime against humanity and the war crimes that took place in 1971 are still lingering in the minds of those who experienced the liberation war firsthand. Perhaps after another 10-15 years, we will not have any more witnesses to the rape of Bangladesh. It is high time to recognize the 1971 Bangladesh genocide. As we have titled our webinar, that Bangladesh, from a bottomless basket in 1970 or 71, now has become the role model of the socioeconomic development, and it is termed as Bangladesh Development Miracle. Our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, built the country only in 3.5 years rule after independence. His untimely, brutal murder halted the country's progression for a long time. However, under the pragmatic and dynamic leadership of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who luckily survived the heinous killing of Bangabandhu along with his 19 members for the last decade, Bangladesh has become one of the fastest growing economies of the world. She took the initiative to recognize 25 March as Genocide Day with strong message to stop genocide worldwide. We will hear today from our noted speakers about this journey, how Bangladesh rose from the devastating genocide to a development miracle today. I take this opportunity to introduce our keynote speakers today, our valiant freedom fighters, Colonel retired Quazi Sazzad Ali Zahir, Bir Protik sir, who was conferred the highest award of Bangladesh Swadhinota Padak in 2013 and Padma Shri Award from India in 2021. Zahir sir is the person whose singular dedication in searching for and researching on the unknown freedom fighters has succeeded in safeguarding the contribution of the valor and sacrifice of the common people. His more than 3-decade-long research has resulted in several books, including the 4-volume Deshtake Bhalobashi. In bringing out significant events and incidents of the war, his dedication has always been for the bravery and sacrifices of the common people. Both as a freedom fighter and researcher, he has realized how the tremendous contribution of the commoners have yet to be recounted in the annals of our history. I now have the honor to give the floor to our honorable keynote speaker, Sazzad Ali Zahir, Bir Protik, sir.
Excellency, by your fascinating deliberation, you touch my heart. I have seen genocide from very near quarters. I have seen the sins which no man or woman should see. I have seen the torment, the suffering, and victims cry. Today, in front of the August gathering, I have a very small submission. That is, war kills. War kills women, children, love, but mostly kills history if you don't culture history. Genocides were there, it was there, it is now. But if you don't stop it, it's going to happen to any other country. I don't want to see or hear any other country falling victim of genocide like we have seen in 1971. It was a tidal wave of blood. It looked like a forever war. Pakistanis used weapons of sadness, I say. The weapons are used to make people sad. They used and abused history. Why did they do it? Because they didn't consider Bengalis or Bangalis to be taking charge of their own lives. They were horrified when they heard that our leader Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman won massive mandate in both provincial and national elections, and they have to hand over the power to us. They conspired in a place called Larkana on 17th of January 1971 and decided that they will not hand over power. But the intelligence people told them Bengalis will revolt. They said we'll not give them the time. We'll mobilize forces and conduct a military operation on them. There is no uprising. And they also referred to that they have experienced a genocide. Here I tell you something which you must record, especially our friends from abroad, that Pakistan is a genocidal nation. When I raised this point in a seminar in USA, in American University, some of the Pakistani students raised their voice and said, I am being parochial, I'm being anti-history. But I'm not anti-history, I'm pro-history. I am not Pontius Pilatus. I am a very simple freedom fighter who had seen genocide, who have fought against genocide. Pakistanis had conducted 2 genocides before Bangladesh genocide, but history is silent on them. First genocide they conducted in 1968 onwards in Balochistan in West Pakistan. When their people rose for equal rights, they are massacred. Massacred in thousands, raped, murdered, and forceful displacement of population forced them to flee from Pakistan. They took shelter in Iran, Afghanistan, and Lebanon. And they are very successful. They have crushed the Baluch rebellion. Then what happened, you'll be very surprised. Pakistanis shed crocodile tears for the Palestinian Muslim brothers who are being subjugated. But now I will give you a very different picture. I went to Jordan to study this case, but it was a very difficult thing. People don't open their mouth. Millions of Palestinians crossed the Jordan River after 1948 and took shelter in Jordan because of the attack by the Israeli forces. There, these poor refugees were demonstrating for equal rights, right for food, right for shelter, right for treatment, right for education. King Hussein of Jordan said, I will not give you equal rights as my population. So the demonstrations got better. So he didn't use his Jordanian army. They may be sympathetic toward the Arab Palestinians. They got, because King Hussein of Jordan studies history, he knew Pakistanis can do genocide. He had under him 2nd Division of Pakistan Army, commanded by General Ziaul Haq, who later became the president of Pakistan, and ordered him and his troops to launch attack on the innocent, unarmed Palestinians. Many Palestinians were killed. Many left Jordan, went to Syria, Iraq, and went to Palestine back. I've gone to those camps actually. They live there now. They don't want to speak. But once they know that I'm from Bangladesh, a victim of genocide, my country was, they hug me, cried, and say, don't talk about it in this country. King Hussein's troops will kill you. The intelligence community will kill you. They told me everything that Pakistanis have done. Exactly what they did in Balochistan and Bangladesh later on. My dear friends, Moshe Dayan, the defense minister of Israel, gave a statement after this incident. He said, we have killed many Palestinians, it's a fact, for 26 years. But Pakistan's General Ziaul Haq has killed much more Palestinians in 26 days of his genocide. That's what Pakistan was all about. They're armed with history of genocide. They made an operation plan called Operation Searchlight. This is the 2nd genocide plan which is written in this whole world. First one was 1B resolution, 1943, made by Nazi Germany to exterminate the Jews finally. Second was Operation Searchlight. Now I'll come back to some facts told by Pakistani generals from their own voice. On 25th night, when Yahya Khan left Dhaka at 4:30, reached Karachi at 11:30, he called his chairman of civil aviation, send a message to Tikka Khan in Dhaka. Tikka Khan was the commander of Pakistani forces, a very brutal man who conducted genocide in Balochistan. This was his 2nd genocide. He said, send a message to Tikka Khan. What's the message, sir? By coded word, by wireless, sort them out. So the Operation Searchlight was launched. Next morning at 6 o'clock, Tikka Khan comes out of his command post. He is little sleepy, but his scream says, Dhaka has no people. Dhaka has no people. Few stray dogs are walking in the streets, eating human flesh. Bobby has used everything in his hand. Dhaka was being commanded, the operation was being commanded by Brigadier Jahangir Arbab, a brigadier of Pakistan Army whose nickname was Bobby. So that's an admission of guilt. And let's come back to the next commander who took over from Tikka Khan after 1 month. His name was General Amir Abdullah Khan Niazi. On 12th of on Dhaka was being commanded
স্যার আপনি মিউটেড হয়ে গেছেন, আমরা শুনতে পাচ্ছি না।
So what happened is that the Niazi Khan, who was the commander, used to run brothel business in Lahore, the capital of Punjab. And we all know about that. All details are with us. So a general who runs a brothel business, his troops are going to raid. Let me tell you something in clear. We say 200,000 women are raped. I have written 60 books. I have visited every part of Bangladesh. I have seen rape victims. They talk to me, but many of them don't want me to express their names because of social conditions. I think total women murdered and raped in 71 comes to 600,000 minimum. That's the level. Now, I have nothing, no complaint against the new generation of Pakistanis, but definitely Pakistan as a nation should try their war criminals. If they don't, they will become the victim and of their own burden. Mr. Bhutto committed during Simla agreement, later on in Delhi agreement, to Mrs. Indira Gandhi, Prime Minister of India, and Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Prime Minister of Bangladesh. He is going to try the war criminals. He formed a committee led by Chief Justice. It's not Hamidur Rahman, as said in the record, it's Hamdur Rahman. They conducted an inquiry. Only one small part of the report was given to the press. In Pakistan's intelligence system, they went and seized all the documents. The world was deprived from the ferocity of the genocide. That's what we have to know. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't suffer from tremendous nationalism. I'm a citizen of the world. We should be thinking of a global world. Genocide anywhere, genocide everywhere. Nowhere there should be genocide. Pakistanis were not tried, so they have committed more genocide. And the genocide didn't stop. It happened in Vietnam, it happened in Cambodia, it happened in Rwanda, it happened in Bosnia, it keeps on happening in any place of the world. Let us stand together and make a solemn obligation to stop genocide. Our future children should be saved from this horrible aspect of human history, that is genocide. My heart pains when I remember the scenes I saw in 71 and after that. That history says so, that if you don't stand together against genocide, then it will keep continuing, and no country and no people in this world will be safe. With those, I just say that when Athens' dust will wither out, vision will become clear. When the vision will become clear, you will see more and more genocide out of every aggressive gesture by any military into any land. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. I thank Her Excellency, the Ambassador, for being kind to allow me this session in front of such great gathering. I finish by giving national slogan to you, Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu. Joy Bangla means victory for Bengal, and Joy Bangabandhu in the memory of victory of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib, our father of the nation, who tried very hard to get the perpetrators of the war crime punished. But before that, he was assassinated with his entire family on 15 August 1975. And all the national leaders were eliminated, and the war criminals took over Bangladesh. That's another story. Thank you. I'm very grateful.
Excellency, you are muted. Excellency, you are muted.
Oh, Thank you so much, Sazzad sir, for your very passionate and because you speak from your heart and you were on the ground in 1971. And we are fortunate to have you and your views. And I have to tell that this record has been, this event is being recorded, and we have spoken to our Liberation War Museum, and this will be a part of the history, and it will be stored in the Liberation War Museum also. Thank you, Sazzad sir, for being here, for your time. I know you have been busy all day. You have been invited to many events to speak, but your words in Latin America, since Bangladesh is the only, represented in Brasilia, your words makes a lot of difference in these Latin American countries, because both Latin American countries, Brazil and Bangladesh, we share the same sentiment on genocide. May I now introduce to you a great friend of Bangladesh, a person who is again a live witness to the atrocities of 1971, and whose 20-hour-long footages taken over 9 months, or maybe I'm not sure whether 9 months, he will tell us, of the Liberation War remains as one of the most valuable pieces of evidence of our struggle for independence in 1971. Yes, dear audience, Mr. Lear Levin, a great friend of Bangladesh, the famous American photographer and eminent filmmaker and recipient of the prestigious Friends of Liberation War Honor from Bangladesh. Mr. Lear Levin, I came to know him personally while I was serving as Consul General in New York. Whenever I reached out to him, I could see Bangladesh in him. And he still has so much of love for our country, for our people, particularly our enlightened community in New York. Mr. Lear Levin, thank you so much for joining. I know it's also a busy day for you. You are remembered by our community in New York as well on this special day. I cannot speak more, and I do not want to speak more. We want to hear from you, Mr. Levin, your experiences, your views, and whatever you feel like talking on this special day. Floor is to you, Mr. Levin.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I'm very gratified to be part of this very important day. Very touched. I'm also using my wife's computer, so my name is not Raquel, it's actually Lear Levin, if anybody reads the subtitles incorrectly. I wanted to begin with one thing. I think it's so ironic that in 1971, the United States was arming the Pakistanis. And today, they're arming the Ukrainians. It's an incredible turnabout. It's a turnabout in our political system. And it's exciting for me to know that our country has seen the light and realized that evil dictators should not be aided in any way unless it's on the way to jail. In 1970, there was a horrendous tornado and flood in what was East Pakistan. And my film company donated a television commercial to raise money to feed those people injured by this event. And at that time, I had an opportunity to meet the warm, wonderful people of Bengal. And I was very touched by their presence. And then in 71, when the horrible tragedy happened and the vicious Pakistanis invaded your new country of Bangladesh, I was very moved, and I closed my company and I took a small crew And we traveled to India first and associated ourselves with a small group of musicians who were traveling throughout the refugee camps, throughout the 12 unsettled refugees. And they were bringing music and messages of hope for these people. And we photographed them and we traveled with them and try to record the moments that were being generated. I wanted to make a film that I had hoped could raise money to feed these hungry people. And so we traveled for weeks and weeks and weeks and eventually went over to Bangladesh, where the musicians entertained the Muktabahini. And I went out with my camera on patrols with the Muktabahini to try to record some of the action that was going on. When I left Bangladesh, I had never had a chance to meet Bangla Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, unfortunately. Since then, I have developed a warm association with Sheikh Hasina, who invited my wife and I to tea one wonderful afternoon. But when I came back to New York in '71, I had tons of footage of what was going on and the carnage, the suffering of the refugees. And I put it together into a feature-length film, which I called Joy Bangla. Unfortunately, by the time the film was finished and initially screened, the major event of the genocide and the action was no longer in the press. And people in the United States had lost interest in the headlines. And all the footage was stored in my basement for years, for almost 20 years. After that point, a lovely young couple, Tarek Masood and his wife, Catherine, came to visit me and asked for the footage and said, the country had changed. There was no longer a democracy in Bangladesh. And if I was to give them all the footage that I had collected, they could cut their own film and perhaps it could reawaken the spirit of democracy in their country. So I gave them all 70 hours of the footage. It took them 5 years and they cut together a wonderful film called Muktir Gan. And they credited me with collecting all the footage in the film. And this film was screened throughout your country. And evidently it had a major effect on what was to transpire afterwards and help create a new democracy. And for their work, I am very grateful. And they deserve as much attention as anyone has ever been kind enough to give to me. I've always had a warm spot for the people of Bangladesh and my Bengali friends in New York and in your country. And I hope that continues for as long as I exist. I'm very grateful that you invited me today on this occasion. I hope it remains memorable in people's mind. It's very important. We have to fight genocide every chance we get. Thank you, Your Excellency, and Joy Bangla. Thank you.
Joy Bangla. Thank you. Thank you, dear Levin, for your wonderful remarks and your time. We like to hear more from you because as we were saying, maybe after a few years, we will not have this live witness with us. We pray for your long life, and I'm sure you will be able to travel to Bangladesh now to see again how Bangladesh is prospering, and you will have your new footage to project our progressive, beautiful country, Bangladesh, and the people. Now I have the honor to recognize that our special guest of this webinar, Ambassador, His Excellency Ambassador Shabbir Sir has joined from Dhaka. Actually, on 25th March, every one of us are too busy as we observe the Genocide Day. But still, as I was saying, due to the time difference of 9 hours from Bangladesh and Brazil, we are fortunate that it's night in Bangladesh, but they made their valuable time to join this international webinar. Also, we have our one guest from Argentina, and it's my honor to present before you Professor Dr. Irene Victoria Massimino, International Criminal Court lawyer from Buenos Aires, Argentina, working as a rapporteur of the High Criminal Court. She holds a Master of Laws from Indiana University and also Indianapolis School of Law, USA, and a Master of Arts in Human Rights from the School of Advanced Study of the University of London. She is currently a head professor in the Department of International Education at the Universidad Nacional de 3 de Febrero, Argentina, and Stockholm University. Although she is from Argentina, Argentina is very, very close to our heart in Bangladesh. And ever since our childhood, another prominent name, Victoria Ocampo, has been spoken time and again. She's a global figure, writer, and critic for publishing Sur, which means South, the most powerful and longest running literary magazine of her time in Latin America. Victoria Ocampo had, at age of 80, come out to the street of Buenos Aires, and along with writer George Louis Barrios and Reverend Father Ismail Kilis, got other intellectuals, academics, painters, jurists, and eminent authors united for the cause of Bangladesh people in 1971. Dear audience, let us now welcome Dr. Irene Victoria Massimino from the land of Victoria Ocampo. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is such a pleasure to be here, not physically in Brazil, but emotionally somehow in Brazil. It would have been nicer to be in person, I guess, but it's good that we have this virtual world now. So I was actually in Belgium recently because I joined, I was invited also to join the webinar held by Ambassador Mahboub there. That's why I apologize for being late. It is such a pleasure, Your Excellency, to finally meet you and to meet all of the panelists here. Unfortunately, I missed some of your comments and presentations and remarks. As Her Excellency mentioned, I come from the land of Victoria Ocampo, which I personally like a lot, even before knowing her wonderful bond with Rabindranath Tagore and how she stood up for Bengalis in 1971. I actually, in 2020, during the pandemic, I was requested to record a video for 14 December, which is Intellectual Martyr Day. And I was requested by head of the Liberation War Museum, Mofidul Haq, and Her Excellency Ministry of Education, Deepu Moni. And I recorded in the house of Victoria Ocampo. I asked for permission. I can make that video available for you if you haven't seen it, but Your Excellency. And that was a wonderful and very an emotional moment because it sort of joined those two emblematic figures, both of Argentina and Bangladesh, and then that call for peace and support for Bangladesh liberation. I will just briefly talk about my experience with Bangladesh, which started actually in 2015. Argentina's relationship with Bangladesh actually goes beyond Victoria Ocampo and Tagore. It also relates to the atrocities that occur in our countries and the common elements that we've joined in the aftermath. And I referred by this to the justice processes Argentina and Bangladesh continue to carry to try, in the case of Bangladesh, local collaborators for the 1971 genocide. I first came to Bangladesh in 2015 in a conference on genocide and justice organized by the Liberation War Museum. And in this conference was the idea to put countries or to relate and study in a comparative perspective countries that had suffered mass atrocities. We cannot compare the facts of what occurred in Argentina and in many countries of South America during the 70s. But we definitely can find some common experiences of Argentina and Bangladesh. After I became very interested for this particular scenario that moves beyond what is that intellectual relationship between Tagore and Ocampo. And I like to highlight also in this important day of Genocide Day that the lack of international recognition of the Bangladesh genocide, it's something that it's still amusing, despite that in academia and scholarship, and despite this internal justice process of Bangladesh, still continues to happen. Recently, at the Lemkin Institute, where I'm part of, we formally recognized the Bangladesh genocide, and that inspired Genocide Watch as well, another non-governmental organization working in the prevention of genocide, also recognized the genocide due to that, and we hope that this moves forward. But I wanted to mention these particularities of the justice processes, judicial justice processes, because they're very relevant. They do bring, they're a complement to the international and formal recognition of the crime, and they have been ignored by the international community for so long. We could have criticisms such as we have with the Argentine internal justice processes. It's very difficult to try mass atrocities, and our criminal codes and our judges are not experienced to do that, and this is something that I always highlight. But it is very important to recognize the efforts that Bangladesh is doing, very similar to Argentina. That's why I have this sort of particular bond. But the efforts that Bangladesh started to make in the 21st century, and that did not make before because of internal problems that it's not needed to be addressed here. But in 1973, Bangladesh already had the idea of bringing local collaborators to justice because it passed the 1973 Act to create the special international crimes tribunals. So I think this indifference towards this justice process also is somehow related to the indifference of the international community to properly recognize the Bangladesh genocide. And there are many reasons, maybe because Bangladesh continues to be a small nation, a developing nation, a nation in the so-called global south, very similar also to the case of Argentina. Also because the Pakistani perpetrators it's an ally of global powers, and unfortunately that also prevents a proper recognition. And also because in today's world, even though we are supposed to have equal sovereignty and equality amongst human beings, there are some atrocities that seem to be perceived as more important than others. So I personally have worked enormously on the trials. Actually, part of my PhD, my SJD in law, takes the example of Bangladesh national trials because of their particular use of trials in absentia. And so I think that's an important part that should be especially recognize these efforts of the international community. It's very clear that the entities like the ICC, the International Criminal Court, were created for countries that were unwilling or unable to hold perpetrators, to bring perpetrators or accused persons to court. And this is definitely not the case of Bangladesh, which has done internally a fight of impunity. So this is a little bit of my background, my academic and professional background, and relationship with this, because of my legal background with the trials, but also with the importance of the recognition of the genocide. So if there's further discussion, I'd be more than happy to address anything else that I probably have forgotten in this very short presentation. But thank you all, and thank you, Your Excellency. This is really an honor for me to be here, and I apologize once again for being late. And then I'll be presenting in Washington too, so I'll be in 3 sort of continents or regions or countries today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Irene Massimino. Thank you for your very, the perspective, the legal perspectives that you have very nicely said. And we definitely understand that you are busy and you are taking much of interest to for the recognitions of the genocide worldwide. And the international recognition of the genocide is so important, and you are doing a marvelous job. Congratulations to you. And we look forward to have more collaboration with you, since I will be also covering the Argentina. And I look forward to meet you in person. And from there, we should go forward. And as you have very rightly mentioned, that the so-called global South, I mean, so we should capitalize on the South-South cooperation, not only on economic or political cooperation, but cooperation on the moral grounds, and as we share the same sentiments. And also, although Brazil, Argentina, these countries are almost 10,000 miles apart in global maps from Bangladesh, but we are very connected emotionally and philosophically, and also by virtue of the football. That is also very a connecting point. But we have not explored before this valuable connection that exists between Bangladesh and the Latin American countries, but better late than not ever. So we will be working, and we look forward for our cooperation in these international issues. And that brings me to another wonderful person that I met in person, journalist Ivan Godoy. Welcome. And he actually visited Bangladesh, and he's also an expert in international relations. He reported wars in Iraq, Bosnia, Ecuador, and Nicaragua for newspapers, TV, and radio stations, and visited more than 50 countries as a journalist. Most importantly, he's a friend of Bangladesh. Ivan, the floor is open to you.
Good afternoon. As a journalist, I had the opportunity to visit Bangladesh in 2011. In 2018, invited by the Bengali government. My first impression, and I believe all people from countries outside Asia have the same impression, was the extremely high population density of Dhaka, the capital and largest city of Bangladesh. The big population of the country, now around 167 million, live in a territory similar to the area of the Brazilian state of Amapá. But in the Brazilian case, Amapá only has less than 900,000 inhabitants. 50 years ago, Bangladesh gained its independence after a very difficult liberation war with very huge human losses. The visit to the Liberation War Museum in Dhaka was very impressive for me. I saw the magnitude of the sacrifice of the Bengali people. The first question for a foreigner was how a country with only 5 decades of independence now proudly stands as an emerging trade and investment destination with a continued average economic growth and nearly 7% from 28 until today. Furthermore, Bangladesh has an impressive track record of poverty reduction. From being one of the poorest nations at birth in 1971, with a per capita GDP that was the 10th lowest in the world, Bangladesh reached lower middle income status in 2015. Poverty declined from 43.5% in 1991 to 14.3% in 2016, based on the international poverty line of $1.9 a day. After meeting with high officials, ministers, the Speaker of the Parliament, and common citizens, and reading a lot of information in the international press, I understood the secret of this lovely nation, the focus on human development. And good education policies are basic for it. In Bangladesh, all citizens must undertake 10 years of compulsory education, which consists of 5 years at primary school level and 5 years at high school level. Primary and secondary education is financed by the state and free of charge in public schools. It's necessary to emphasize another aspect. When we talk about everyone's rights to education, we mean boys and girls. This country is a champion of the struggle for women's rights and an example for all of South Asia. This is reflected in the prominent female presence in all aspects of national life, including in the political area and, of course, in diplomacy, as we have been able to prove. Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, is the longest-serving female head of government in the world. Speaking of this outstanding political leader, I would like to pay a tribute for her father, Bangladesh's founding father and first Prime Minister, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Much of the country's success in recent decades is due to the implementation of the Bangabandhu's idea that Bangladesh should be a country where all people live together in peace, no matter what their ethnicity or religion. Thank you. Joy Bangla.
Joy Bangla. Thank you, Ivan. Thank you so much for telling our audience about what Bangladesh is today. And you are absolutely right that it was, although it was very late, but it is possible. And our Bangladeshi people are very resilient, innovative, and we are blessed to have a proper leadership, very pragmatic and dynamic leadership of our Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, who is trying to fulfill the dream that our father of the nation, Bangabandhu, dreamt and to give economic and political emancipation to the people, not only a sovereign land, but freedom of mind. That's what we want. And that is the take of today, is that we cannot hide the history. We have to recognize the crime, the war crimes, the crime against humanity. Otherwise, we will not be, no nation will be able to go forward with the spirit of freedom. Thank you, Ivan. Thank you for your very, very nice remarks. And unfortunately, one of our eminent speakers, Dr. Selina Hossain, who is the president of the Bangla Academy and also an eminent scholar, could not join because she has been attending too many events today, and she actually got emotionally down, and she cannot speak more about the genocide today, and she has sent her sincere apologies to you. Actually, she was one of the in the listed person who was supposed to be killed on the 14th of December. So, but I believe that this is only the beginning, and as I said, that our events today's motto or our aim is to build on this day and to gather support and assistance from all corners in Latin America and all corners of the world for this cause and to stop genocide. Before we end our event today, I'd like to again recognize the special guest of the government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, His Excellency Ambassador Shabbir Ahmad Chowdhury, who is the Secretary West of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He was also very busy throughout the day, but he always takes lots of interest to work in Brazil, Argentina, and in Latin America. Thank you, sir, for your kind presence. I have the honor to give the floor to our special guest today, Ambassador Shabbir Ahmad Chowdhury.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I didn't hear. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Excellency. Excellency Sadia Faizunnesa, Ambassador of the People's Republic of Bangladesh in Brazil. Colonel Quazi Sazzad Ali Zahir, Bir Protik, sir. Madam Selina Hossain, she's not there. Professor Dr. Irene Victoria Massimino from Argentina. Mr. Levin from the United States of America. Mr. Ivan Godoy from Brazil. My dear colleagues in the Embassy of Bangladesh in Brazil, and my dear colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who have joined virtually. Assalamu alaikum and good evening from Bangladesh. First of all, I'd like to apologize for joining this important virtual meeting. After quite some time, it has started because, as Sadia Faizunnesa has rightly mentioned, that we had to be busy almost throughout the day because it's a very special event in the history of Bangladesh. And as we are almost coming to a close of the celebration of both the Mujib year and the Golden Jubilee of the independence of Bangladesh. In this auspicious occasion, first, I would like to recall with great admiration, gratitude, and I pay my deep homage to the greatest Bengali of all times, father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, without whose contribution and sacrifice we wouldn't have achieved the independence of Bangladesh. I also recall with deep respect and gratitude the martyrs who sacrificed their lives to establish a country, a sovereign state, devoid of tyranny and injustice. May Almighty Allah grant them Jannatul Firdaus, that is the highest honor in the eternal life hereafter. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to convey my best regards to Sadia Faizunnesa for arranging this platform where we have had this wonderful and timely discussion on the 1971 genocide, touching upon the present day Bangladesh that rose as a phoenix from the ashes of the devastating war atrocities under the charismatic leadership of the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and now progressing rapidly towards accomplishing the dream of becoming a digital golden Bengal under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister, who happens to be the daughter of the father of the nation, Bangabandhu. I take this opportunity to recall and reiterate the support of the Latin America in our war of liberation. Victoria Ocampo, as it has been mentioned, of Argentina supported Bangladesh in 1971. Salvador Allende, the Chilean president, was a very good friend of the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. The Latin American governments played a strong role in support on the 1971 Liberation War. The birth of Bangladesh came through a painful and agonizing history. The night of 25th of March 1971 is the darkest night in the history of Bangladesh. We paid a great price for our freedom with 3 million martyrs, around 200,000 mothers and sisters violated brutally, numerous war crimes and crimes against humanity. An estimated 10 million people were displaced. The war-ravaged country was left devastated and destitute. The atrocities faced by the millions of Bangladeshis in 1971 were never recognized as genocide. The Pakistani army had launched a systematic and pre-planned attack called the Operation Searchlight on unarmed civilians in the then East Pakistan on the night of 25th of March 1971 in order to kill the spark of the Bengali unrest. It is proved by researchers that the evidence of genocide was apparent from the very beginning. Operation Searchlight affected all Bengalis, especially intellectuals and other prominent personalities. The Pakistanis and their collaborators killed an estimated 991 teachers, 13 journalists, 49 physicians, 42 lawyers, and 16 writers, artists, and engineers to crumble the Bengali resistance. It was not only a systemic and targeted genocide of the best and brightest minds of Bangladesh, but also an ulterior motive to wipe out one specific religious community, that is the Hindus. However, the perpetrators never admitted their crimes. It is easily understood how the denial and impunity surrounding the history of the genocide of the Bengalis in 1971 will make room for many more crimes of equal stature. The Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has always called on the international community to recognize the war crimes committed by the Pakistani army and their collaborators in 1971 as genocide. Today's webinar surely gives us some more food for thought, and I earnestly hope that we will continue to pursue the international community to recognize the Bangladesh genocide. I would urge our eminent speakers to continue disseminating the same among your peers and your country people. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the government of Bangladesh will always be happy to be of any help in this regard. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, sir, for your very thoughtful and very rightfully summarized discussion today that the perpetrators never admitted to their crimes, and our appeal through this event and through this day today to realize that this act of denial and that obscures the history of genocide of the Bengalis in 1971 will undoubtedly make ways for more genocides. So today we have a very strong message to share with the global community that genocide should stop. All the genocides that happened in the world should be recognized, the perpetrators should be punished, and the word never again. That is the vision that Bangladesh wants to propagate through this Genocide Day for the world. And I'm so happy and honored that we have friends all around the world, in Latin America, in all the continents, who voice the same on this day. I'm sure the 3 million martyrs, the people who were brutally killed for no reason, they are looking at us, looking at the world, that how long will the world has to endure this menace of genocide. And I have the honor also today to share again through this event to all our audience that Bangladesh has endured this unbearable pain. And that's why our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina opened the door for the Rohingyas. Bangladesh is hosting almost more than 1.1 million Rohingyas, forcibly displaced Myanmar nationals, and voicing for their rights. It should stop. It should stop immediately and forever. And as I said, never again. It's a very emotional moment for us, but we like to gain strength as Bengalis are very strong and very resilient. Every 25th March, not only 25th March, but this genocide gives us the strength to rise against any atrocities against mankind, humanity, and genocide. I'd like to express my special thanks to the government of the Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who, although it was very late, but finally the Parliament recognized 25th March as the National Genocide Day. I thank you all the eminent speakers again for your valuable remarks. Very strong messages were conveyed today through our event, and for your time. And let's work together to stop the menace against humanity, stop the genocide forever and never again. I wish you all the best by paying my deepest respect again to our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, to all the martyrs, and my deepest respect to the valiant freedom fighters like Zahir Sars who are with us today. Thank you once again for joining. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu.